It's a housing law that lets people split their lots when they would normally not be able to split their lots because the lot is too small. And it also lets people build two homes where they could have only built one with the underlying zoning code. So if you combine both parts, or if you can use either part and you can combine parts of them with ADUs. So there's a variety of different ways to get to 4 units on what was previously one lot. And it's a law that hasn't been used a ton in California. It's sort of in the early days of its adoption. And so there have been something like 100 and some projects in the first few years that use one or both parts of the law. But it's come up again in the news because in the fire rebuild areas of Los Angeles, so that's the Palisades and Altadena, people are worried that SB9 is going to be used in ways that people don't want. That SB9 will be used to alter the feel of the Palisades or Altadena. And in response to the controversy, the governor has passed an executive order and the mayor of LA has passed an executive order. And it's pretty controversial, so I just want to talk about it out loud and like share where my thoughts are. I'll be talking about things on kind of, I'm of two minds and I want to share both thought processes. Hey, Kydex, Arizona Kydex, hello. Thanks for popping in. Thanks for saying hi. So we're talking about these two laws, or the use of this law in these two areas. And I guess where I start, I've explained what the laws do. I'll start by saying what I'm worried about, where I find common ground with people who don't want SB9 to be used too much. And this is where we share common ground. Normally, I'm a big supporter of SB9, and you'll hear through this video that I still support SB9. But the things that I find alarming, it's about displacement after disasters. So there's a really good book called The Great Displacement by Jake Biddle. We've talked about it on the channel. And what it explains is that after a fire, it actually does a deep dive on Santa Rosa, which is very close to where I live and was affected by a similar fire complex that my community was affected by. And it studies that, like, hey, after a fire, a lot of people have different levels of insurance. And if you do not have very good insurance, you might not be able to rebuild your home. And you might only have a very limited budget to find accommodations while your current home is unoccupiable. So either your house burns down, or it's damaged, or it's just in a neighborhood with like no electricity, or it's surrounded by damaged houses. In all of those cases, you need to move, sometimes for months. And a lot of the home insurance policies don't cover a large displacement fee. On the other hand, some insurance policies cover a very generous displacement fee. So if you were previously paying a mortgage of, I don't know, $5,000 a month, then you might have an insurance policy that says, hey, you get $5,000 a month displacement. And what that does is it spikes the remaining rental market. So people with very good insurance coverage pay top dollar for available rentals. That shrinks the market of available rentals even more than it already is shrunk because it's tight in California. And then people with mediocre insurance policy coverage or who are underinsured, they can't afford to compete in that rental market. They move farther and farther away, or they just move in with family, sometimes very, very far away. So that's what happens very organically after natural disasters because of the way we've set up our insurance policies. Okay, that's a long thing to say. I hope that we think about that seriously and that we do not allow policies like SB9 to accelerate the rate of involuntary displacement. Like, you don't want people forced to leave their houses just because this terrible disaster's already befallen them. Like, they also have to move. That stinks. All right. I think a lot of the arguments about SB9 do ring with that, where people say, like, hey, Altadena not for sale. Like, they don't want people forced to sell their properties and move away forever because they were underinsured. Now, On the other hand, I think it is very dangerous. On the other hand, we have these amazing laws like SB9, which are statewide preemptions. And what makes them great is that they affect all communities equally, right? When you have a statewide law, there's an opportunity to build affordable housing in high resource neighborhoods, and there's an ability to build housing everywhere. What you do not want is to create little pockets that are exempt, because what always happens is that people in power use those pockets to exempt affluent, powerful communities. And it's bad for the long run for everybody to create like these two parallel universes. So I'm not saying that that's true about the Palisades or Altadena, but we don't want any governor of California or any mayor of a city to be able to create like a little pocket universe like Lex Luthor, where things, the law doesn't apply in that pocket universe. And in the long term, like that's real bad. So those are kind of the two things that I'm thinking about very actively. I think a third thing, so I was just down in Altadena and Pasadena and talking to a lot of stakeholders about this. I should have said that at the top. Like I try not to form these opinions in a vacuum. Like I don't live there. I didn't lose my house. Like my family's okay. So it's too easy to like think about this stuff broadly from far away and not really get into the details. But I have met homeowners who lost their homes. I have met people who are near the fire line, and so maybe they didn't lose as much, but they're still very affected by that neighborhood. I've met people who work in the government there. I've met lots of folks, right? I've been thinking about this. One last thought that actually somebody else gave to me is that SB9 might be a way to fight displacement in certain circumstances. So let's say you were underinsured and you don't have enough money to rebuild. Hey, Alonzo, thanks for saying hi. Thanks for popping in, everybody. Feel free to pop stuff in the chat. I'm doing this SB9 recap in the fire zone in Altadena and the Pacific Palisades, but we could talk about anything after that. So imagine you're a homeowner who's underinsured and you need, let's call it 600 grand to rebuild, and your insurance policy covers you for 300 grand or 350 grand. So that gap of $250,000 or $300,000, you need to find a way to close that gap. You could actually potentially use laws like SB9 to split your lot and sell half of the lot, which doesn't displace you. You're selling the empty yard potentially, depending on the lot. And then you're using the money you got from that sale to finance the reconstruction of your primary home on the half you kept, or on the 60% of the lot you keep. So that's an interesting kind of curve where I thought, oh, that's a good point. Like SB9 is a tool. It can be used to prevent displacement just in the same way that it could be used to accelerate displacement. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. I'd love to hear if anybody in the audience is also thinking about these issues, like should statewide laws apply in disaster recovery areas? I still don't think it should ever be a mayor passing an executive order, because believe me, as soon as that floodgate opens, we're just going to have, the mayor of some small NIMBY town declaring an emergency because somebody hit a skunk on the road, and they're going to shut down all housing in their community. And that's not an outcome we want. Having said that, I totally, these fires are unprecedented. You're just losing 6,000 homes in each of the communities we're talking about all at once. And as much as I hope that the future is bright and brilliant, and I think that the neighborhoods will be even richer if they integrate middle housing and have more duplexes and triplexes, I don't think we need to win every single fight. And this is a time when homeowners are really, they've been shook up. They lost their home. They oftentimes lost everything. Some people have lost lives, and their friends have lost lives in their community. So I think, as housing people, we need to constantly be in conversation and like check with communities, and when there are good faith arguments for thinking about how we rebuild, I want to be part of those conversations. So yeah, that's my thoughts. Some other stray things, feel free to interrupt in the comments if you guys have your own thing. But some other stray thoughts, I think, there's a better way to do this than executive orders. It's legislation. We don't want to set precedents where mayors or governors pass executive orders to avoid state rules. I don't want to go political, but like there's a balance of power in state government and local government, and it's constitutional balance, state constitution. Also, I think maybe there's a way to throttle SB9 and say, well, look, based on our plans over the next 10 years in the Palisades and in Altadena, the county and the city of LA expected this much growth in that neighborhood. Let's just cap it at this many projects. For example, random idea. I'm not advocating for this, but like that seems more in line with the plan than an absolute exemption, right? Just a thought. What's the other piece? I think too, I always use this test where I ask myself, is the argument that's being made about SB9 specifically, is there a reason to make it specifically about SB9? So when people say, oh, we should prohibit SB9's use in this area to prevent displacement, I think, well, why aren't we just preventing the displacement? Why aren't we creating funding to keep homeowners from moving away and to help them rebuild? Why aren't we banning other forms of conveyance and sale to prevent the displacement? Why aren't we thinking about ADUs? Honestly, like most of SB9 is not that highly adopted, and the only difference practically between ministerial SB9 units and ministerial ADU units, well, it's not the only difference, but the biggest difference is like lots of people do the ADUs and they can't be sold separately necessarily. But right now we're seeing like 15% of permits in these areas come in with accessory dwelling units added. So that shows that like we're gonna get more density, we're gonna get more people living in these neighborhoods, even if SB9 is off the table. So it's kind of like, why are we targeting SB9 and why aren't we prohibiting ADUs? Like, not that I think we should do that, but like, why isn't that the conversation? Additionally, you kind of go, why are the housing people, like my friends, fighting so hard to preserve SB9 when it's barely used and we're still going to get the housing through ADUs? It's kind of a very like, it's either performative or it's like a legal debate. It's more about the future and what could happen if we allow this one use of executive power. It's not actually about these communities, which also feels really weird. Anyway, those are all my thoughts about SB9. I just spent, a few days down in Pasadena and Altadena. It's not enough to have a comprehensive opinion. It's not my opinion to have, honestly. But I want to engage. I've been explaining this in long emails to a lot of friends, and I think I wanted to put the video out there so that the public can participate in the conversation. I apologize if I've said anything insensitive or dumb or wrong. Like, correct me in the comments, and I will be sharing this video with a lot of advocates. So, they'll scroll down and look at what you said too. So please do participate in the conversation and explain what you think we should be thinking about. If you have a view on how it should get done, feel free to share. This is a place to talk about it because I'm gonna be having this conversation. Thank you for watching, and if there's ever anything I can help with, pop into the comments. I'm doing more of these live streams now that they do live vertical. It's very convenient. I don't have to have a whole script and editing thing, so hopefully that helps. Hopefully we do a good job in LA. Every single person I talk to in the housing community wants us to do a good job, wants to rebuild in a way that's safe, where the houses will still exist in 100 years, wants the communities to be better after we rebuild. So it's genuine. Anyway, Thanks for watching. Let's build some housing.